Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be here. I know it's been a long day and we've had many presentations. The advantage of coming in last is, of course, that all the important things you want to say has already been said. So I can basically dismiss you and say go to lunch. But that wouldn't be appropriate because I think a lot of people are fascinated by the Singapore education system and what some of the lessons that the Singapore education system might have for the rest of us. I suppose one way of expressing that sentiment is to basically ask, how did Singapore transit from the third world to the first world in about 4 decades? And what role did education and training play in this? And before I get further into my slides, I want to try and link up with what was said this morning, because we had actually, Singapore is the third island that we're talking about. We had Hong Kong, we had Ireland, and now Singapore. And we are small islands with small population bases. Hong Kong about 8 million, Ireland about 4.5 million, Singapore about 4.5 million. Singapore's area, 750 square miles. Very small. Number of schools, 300, 350. K to 12, 500,000 students in schools. Number of teachers, 30,000. Now, it is small. And you might be tempted to think that all the things that we do and we do well because it is small. It's not the case. Many of the problems in education have nothing to do with science. It has to do with the ways in which we look at the issues of education, the principles we need to apply to solving the problems. And I think that is hopefully what it will be the message. It's not that the United States is big and therefore problems are difficult. Size, resources matters. The other thing you need to know about Singapore, because I will focus a great deal on the economy-education link, but you must not think that Singaporeans are obsessed only with economic growth. The reason why we focus on economic growth and the link and the need for employment, there have to be connections between the science, the arts, the vocational, the technical. And one needs to see the education system as a total entity, rather than separate academic schools, separate technical schools, separate vocational schools. That is a structure that is no longer appropriate for the 21st century. And so this notion of flexibility, this notion of multiple pathways, of students being able to change, has to be reflected, because I think the external social and economic environment, the economic environment is all about flexibility, it's all about nimbleness, it's all about the ability to change. We cannot have too rigid a structure in the education because it will be dysfunctional. Singapore used to have only one type of curriculum, largely in the secondary school. Today, there are many more specialized schools. School for the arts, school for sport, schools for science and technology, future schools which are IT. The more variety, the more diversity, the more innovation we can bring to structure and to curriculum, the better we think it will benefit our students. So the whole emphasis of the Ministry of Education in Singapore at this present time is diversifying what was basically a standardized, one-size-fits-all curriculum. And for us, this is an exciting transformation of the education landscape. So the key words for our curriculum innovation: variety, flexibility, multiple pathways. Not a choice between, do we need science, do we need arts, do we need vocational. In some ways, we need them all. The students must be able to make the choices and not overly specialize when they finish grade 10. Another theme that came up in our discussions was really not that students at the end of grade 10 or grade 12 go into the workforce, but they also want to go to university. Now, in most cultures, aspirations to get a university degree is near universal. It's not unique in the Middle East, it's not unique in East Asia, it's not unique in the United States. There has been, for a variety of reasons, the wish that children have degrees, right? But Singapore has looked at this problem and very early on decided that if you want high quality graduates, entry into the university has got to be of students who are of a caliber to be able to do university level studies. You have to have standards of excellence in your apex institutions. You cannot have a situation, and we didn't want a situation, where vast numbers of students went to university. So our university at the present time has only about 27% of the cohort with government-funded university places. But we have 5 excellent polytechnics which have 40% of the year 10 cohort, and we still have 20% of our students going to certificate level courses. So ours is a 3-tier system. But the genius of the system is they are not terminal. The best of the certificate students have guaranteed places in the polytechnics. The best of the polytechnic students have guaranteed places in the universities. So there is a sense in which our structure is enabling students to commit themselves to lifelong learning. And I think that signaling in the educational structure is very valuable for getting students to say, at this point in my educational development, I think I'm better off in the polytechnic than in the university. And because the polytechnics are very closely linked to and advised by the economic sector, the graduates are picked up faster than university graduates. And I think that's an object lesson that you might get the degree for the status, but you may not have a job at the end of it. The jobs may be of a different dimension. This is just some of the statistics. So we call our system a system of bridges and ladders because of the interconnectivity between streams. And I emphasize this again, it's not about, is this structure better than the other? It is about making possible multiple pathways. I want to say a little bit about what do we do with students who are in the weaker 20%. Traditionally, systems have sent them off to vocational schools. Nobody liked to go there, nobody stayed there. But it doesn't mean that weaker students must go to substandard vocational schools. It is possible, by virtue of the curriculum that we choose, of the pedagogy that we choose, of the teachers that we choose, that these can be educational institutions. So that we do not need to consign students who are weak at a particular phase in their development to substandard schools. And I think one of the things of the Singapore system which strikes most people is that it is to some extent highly selective and therefore elitist. The students graduate with very good degrees from the university, but we do not ignore the weaker students. And I think as an educator, I find this a very interesting thing. So in 20 years, Singapore vastly expanded secondary education, modernized the curriculum, emphasized values and character education, all systems do, English, science, mathematics, and technology in the curriculum. You modernized a colonial inherited curriculum into something more appropriate for present times. By about the mid-80s, we had an effect